Is that someone singing over there?
That's on the video team.
Calm down, get a hold of yourself. Sunday night in Bahrain. I'm Stuart Codling, this is Phil Cleeren, and this is our Sunday night wrap-up from a fascinating Bahrain Grand Prix. None of your one-stop processions here. A very, very tactically enticing race. Let's kick it off with McLaren. Oscar Piastri, yay, P1. Lando Norris, nay, P3. Oscar Piastri, quite an imperious performance. Team boss Andrea Stella was asked in his little press conference after the race if this was Oscar's most complete or his best performance in F1. And he couldn't really answer it. He said he thought that Baku last year was a crystalline race under pressure, whereas this was his most robust race. It was very complete. He didn't make a single error. He made exactly the right decisions at the right time, but it was kind of all about managing the gaps. And in the great tradition of McLaren downplaying their superiority, he said, if the race had been hotter, the margins would have been smaller. But shall we get into Lando Norris? Scruffy for Lando, scruffy qualifying, and then not even lining up in his box. And kind of they knew that P2 had been scuppered from there, didn't they?
Yeah, obviously he was very despondent yesterday after qualifying sixth. He said he needed a reset. And again, it's scruffy day today. Very good start, even though he was out of his box, which is a bit of a silly error. But then had a good start, but sort of stalled, didn't he? He struggled to overtake towards the end. First Ferraris, then eventually George Russell that he finished behind. Scruffy, I think is the right word. I'd like to say something about that because I see a lot of comments saying, "Oh, Lando can't handle the pressure. He's bottling
Snowflake.
it. Bottle job. This and that." I don't agree. He showed in Australia under pressure in the rain with Oscar behind him that he can absolutely deliver. It's just that he's not really gelling with his car. McLaren have made very big changes compared to last year. Last year he felt really on top of the car, and this year he's not comfortable. And if you're not comfortable in it, and the margins are so close, and you do have an Oscar Piastri that is firing on all cylinders, it's not good enough to be 95%. And I think that's what's going on, rather than the mental side or anything you can drag into it.
Andrea Stella did say that they'd made changes to the car that have made it more difficult for Lando. So George Russell, another race where George has finished on the podium, and it would kind of gone under the radar if he hadn't had an epic tech fail. So we lost the transponder. My driver tracker on my iPad had him somewhere in Manama.
Yes.
And it seemed to be the case for the rest of the grid. The people behind him couldn't use DRS unless they triggered it manually.
Yeah, he was sort of flipping up and down the leaderboard as it happened, and because the DRS system is relying on a transponder, that meant that all went sideways. At the same time, there was also a brake-by-wire issue. Obviously, he had to completely change his braking style because he didn't have the electronics. So for him to stay ahead of Lando Norris for those 15-20 laps at the end was really impressive, actually.
Teammate Kimi Antonelli outside the top 10, sort of scuppered by the safety car timing and weird decision to put some soft tyres on, which no one seemed to understand, and people still can't understand. But
can we briefly add Russell, because people will be asking why didn't he get a penalty? Because he did use the DRS manually because of that issue. When he was miles behind Piastri, definitely not within 1 second. So there is precedent for this. It happened at the 2018 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. I think it was Checo Perez in the Racing Point, it would have been at the time. He was on the podium and had the same issue because there was like a detection issue at that race with a couple of other drivers as well. He didn't get penalised. Russell didn't get penalised either because he actually lost time because he opened the DRS when he shouldn't have, but then he backed off and lost way more time than he gained. So the stewards were, quite clever.
Scales were balanced.
The scales were balanced. Yeah.
Ferrari, Charles Leclerc, P4. curious sort of almost contra strategy from Ferrari today. They started on the medium tyres, everyone else pretty much at the front on used softs. It kind of looked like they were trying to stage a very, very bold one-stop strategy, but that...
Yeah, I think that was a Delta, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Delta strategy Leclerc was referring to, and was clamouring for until they boxed him against his wishes.
Yeah, and you go, what about Delta?
Yeah.
I'd learned that word specially. That's quite me.
But in their defence, it worked out, didn't they? Because they managed to get the extra tyre life and even passed Norris for a bit. So
indeed, and also arguably they lost out because of the safety car, because they could have gone on to soft tyres. They had some that they were considering putting on, but they decided that the time wasn't right, it was too early. And they were looking at George Russell and thinking, that's never going to work. And George made it work. Lewis Hamilton, P5 after qualifying travails. Actually quite a good race. He said that he started to learn the car. He was a lot more positive once he was out of it, and he's talked a lot about how different it is after 12 years with one team, a car that drives a certain way. He's now in a car that has totally different systems. He has to use engine braking, Carboni industry brakes he's used to. He's now on Brembos, which have a completely different feel, bite point, all that sort of thing. So, big learning experience from him. And
I'm glad he was more positive than yesterday, because he couldn't really be any more negative
than yesterday.
Yeah, good on him.
P6 and P9. The Red Bulls are Dutch website described it as crisis at Red Bull, because Ronald intercepted Helmut Marko on his way to what was a crisis meeting. And what a race for Max Verstappen. Pretty much everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Hard tyres didn't work for him, traffic lights in the pits weren't working for him, brakes weren't working for him.
All sorts. It's Murphy's Law there at Red Bull, and as you say, Ronald's sort of our Helmut Marko correspondent, so he managed to intercept him at a really good time, didn't he? Because then you had Christian Horner, Pierre Gasly, Paul Monaghan. They really got exposed on this kind of circuit. Japan didn't expose it, and here you could really tell they were just miles off. And also they, on Max's side, they had 2 hard tyres available, no new mediums, and clearly
with it being cooler, was the worst tyre.
With it being cooler than yesterday and Friday, we gravitated towards softer mediums, so they were not in a good place.
A picture is building of the Mercedes perhaps having slightly lower peak performance than the Ferrari and the Red Bull, but it is able to access such peaks as it has more consistently over a wider range of tracks and circuit conditions than, say, Ferrari and Red Bull, where you get this sort of pattern of one race great, another race in the absolute doldrums. We may just have time before we go over our 10 minutes to talk about Pierre Gasly. Looked like he was on for P6 before Max Verstappen overtook him. I think the one bright point of Max's race, actually, overtaking the Alpine.
Not that he cheered him up.
No, he must have been very
But great weekend for Alpine, finally some good points. Great lap by Gasly in qualifying, and they did everything right pretty much. So well done to them. And
double points for Haas after what could have been quite a tricky qualifying, where Esteban Ocon reversed into the barriers at speed after taking the corners at the curbs at turn 2 a little bit. Almost carelessly, he said, when he arrived very winded and sore in front of us yesterday, and they really turned it down. He made quite an early pit stop work for him, I think, Esteban, and undercut a few people.
Both Haas drivers undercut people. That really worked out for him. I think Ocon cycled back 3 and 6 or something. He didn't, couldn't hold it, but he was at that point quicker than Max Verstappen was, and the Red Bull just wild. I spoke to Ayo Komatsu, the team boss, an hour ago, I guess, at this stage, and he was beside himself. It was almost too early to interview him because he was still buzzing and full of adrenaline, and he was just so happy. It was really nice to see, because after a debrief, he would maybe give some more considered answers about how and when, But he was just, I'm just so happy with this.
So next week, the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix with Phil and MMB. My voice is going already. I think it's time to go back and dry up my larynx some more in the air-conditioned press room. Thank you for bearing with this madness all through this weekend.